once you get over the hump of talking about it, I became quite comfortable with talking about the fact that I had depression. And this was when I was living in Oregon, and I went home to London for the summer, and I talked to some of my very close male friends that I know through cycling, and just the number of them that were like, yeah, me too, me too, me too. And one in particular, he's a very, very good friend of mine. I used to do rowing with him, and then we did a lot of cycling together. And he was going through some very, very serious mental health issues. And he's actually in the very first podcast that I did. And he came up with the idea of Black Dog, and just the idea of, like, riding with the Black Dog and using cycling as a way to sort of not only talk about mental health, but also just as a way for men to talk to each other, and just using cycling as a way to facilitate that. So that's really what got it started. I kind of didn't really do anything with it for a couple of years, because I guess I was just focused on getting better. And then when I felt ready to be a bit more public with it, started doing the podcast. And then, it's kind of ultimately led to a career change, which has been pretty interesting. And I can, talk about that in more detail if you like.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely would like to get into the career change. And before we do that, first of all, thanks for sharing about your journey with mental health and with what you've experienced with depression. And you've explored this with numerous guests on your podcast. And as you mentioned, cycling in a way and your relationships with people in that community was a catalyst to have this conversation and then to continue it on the podcast. And I know that you and I privately have also talked about just the relationship between endurance sports and anxiety, depression, ADHD, other mental health issues or neurodivergence that people might have. Mm-hmm. What have you learned from doing the podcast? Is there anything new or different from where you started from your exploration of these topics with your guests?
That's a great question. I think, look, one of the biggest sort of evolutions I've had is that, I wonder whether we've reached not whether we've cracked the stigma element to it, but there seems to be there's a lot of talk about mental health issues, right? And even if you just look at it within cycling, there's more people talking about it. There's more athletes that are being open and talking about it. You go beyond the world of cycling. You pick up the newspaper every day, or you read a news website every day, and there's lots and lots of stuff about mental health. And I think one of the things that's changed is just realizing that maybe, the focus is not so much now on just talking about it and reducing stigma. Like, what are we actually going to do about it? Like, what can people do, like, in their lives day to day to confront these problems? And whether it's, I think there's still a lot of stuff around, like, going and seeking help, and people don't know how to go and find a therapist, and they don't know what to look for when they're looking for a therapist. And I did a podcast all about, I actually had my nurse practitioner on who prescribes me my meds, and we talked in detail about that whole process, because until you go through it, you don't know how it works. You don't know what the potential negatives are. So I think for me, the biggest thing is sort of, there may be needing to be more of a focus on action rather than just talking about it to reduce stigma.